Currently on the Paladins public test server, there are 3 test maps that you can play, but you can only play them through the test map queue, which if you hit play and then queue for just test maps instead of siege and payload, then you can play them. I don't know how many people are using the public test server, but what I did was go on my Discord and announce that we were going to play them, and we got enough people to play the game. Well, actually it was straight away every time we got matched at 5v5. Anyway, let's talk about these new maps. These maps haven't been released yet, they aren't finished, but they're giving us a glimpse of the test maps, and these are going to be put into OB or Open Beta 41 as well, once it does actually go live. These maps all have stand-in textures and objects and cover, but it almost looks like if you played CS Source or CSGO in the past, there were maps called D-Texture, I think they were called, and basically they had these test textures in place. What they actually used them for were a lot of players that had bad computers would play on them because they were able to play them, either able just to be able to play them because they were less graphically demanding, but also you could play with high graphics on the models and then you wouldn't have any problem because the map didn't have any models itself, so you could maybe increase your graphics whilst also decreasing it in the map quality. But actually, I had a lot of fun playing those texture games in the past, and actually having these come to the game is interesting in the fact that they're not finished yet, but that they're fun already, and they have this sort of clean look to them, and almost, I don't know, it's just got this charm to it, and a lot of people did like these texture maps in CS and CS Source. Anyway, let's get on with the map. So the first one up, the new one that we've got, is Atrium. Atrium actually means a building with a open top, and it originated in ancient Rome and usually was in bathhouses and things like that, and had maybe gardens inside the buildings. And the odd thing with this map at the moment is the central building doesn't actually have a window or an open top, although it does have sort of like a really high ceiling, so maybe there is going to be a window or an opening put in eventually, but at the moment there isn't anything there. It's just sort of like a flat grey texture. The rest of the map as well has this sort of Roman theme to it, with like red tiling on all the buildings, these placeholder buildings, where they've got more of a fantasy theme because they're rounded. And also there's like this whitewash across the map, which is very common when Romans are portrayed in fantasy and fiction, I guess. But as the textures are placeholders, we can only get a little feel of the sort of mood of the map, but that's sort of where I think they're coming from, like a fantasy Rome. And it sort of makes sense because the developers have said they want to move towards sort of the fantasy side more. So the map itself, well, the actual point building, the main capture point in the center, as it is, these are all siege maps by the way, it's actually really closed off. There's a high ceiling, just like you've played Frozen Guard a lot, there's a big high ceiling in there, but the actual point room is very tight indeed. I think this will sort of benefit the double tank death ball lineups where they're able to get onto the point and hold it against almost everything. And it seems that if you hold it tight, then you can really hold it. As the games we played, if you had the point, then it was hard to take it back off you because it's hard to get inside that room. But because it's tight, it also means that it's vulnerable to things like Drugger's Fire Spit rocket combo where it'll explode in the whole room pretty much. The room being so tight as well makes it really hard for flankers to actually get in and engage with the fights in there. There's no cover, there's no staging above the map in the center of the capture point to get on top of or anything like that. If you go inside, you're pretty much at the mercy of the tanks already inside there that are close range damage dealers, and it's quite difficult to get inside as a flank. However, the actual map, the rest of the map, really benefits flankers because there's roofs pretty much everywhere, and pretty big roofs as well. There's one in the center that rings around the whole of the main point building where you can stand on like properly. Because of the roofs, you sort of slide off a little bit. You can stand on it and you can fire down from it, so any of the flankers that can move upwards, so basically everyone apart from Sky, are going to have a good time, and especially with Drogos as well. Anyone that can get onto these ceilings and can dive up and above the ceilings are going to have a good time in this map. There's also lots of spots for Eevee to jump over and jump back again, which may make it quite a good map for Eevee as well, but she is one of the flankers that is going to enjoy these buildings and roofs and walls that go across the whole map. There are some ridiculous sniper spots at the moment with Kinessa where you can basically get onto a roof next to your own spawn room and fire onto the capture point for the siege mode. I don't know whether they intended for this, but you can only see part of the capture point, but it still seems a little bit broken that you can see basically from the spawn room, and it's very hard for people to retaliate because you're so close to your spawn room. You can just run away back to the spawn and then teleport up there again. I don't know whether they intended that. And some of these buildings, maybe they're gonna have to have a collision something or another on top of them, so that you can only go on like the edges of the buildings rather than like on the actual center, because once you're in the center you can pretty much stay on there forever by just sort of wobbling around a little bit. Either way, it was quite fun to play as Canessa on this map. But again, she would be vulnerable to a flanker going up there, but that would mean they'd have to leave the point and go across to your spawn room to try and chase her down. There's also quite a large area behind the main building, or well, just wherever it is when you're attacking either left or right, but it's basically next to the ocean, so you can knock people off as Bomb King, but also it's going to be where flankers probably have their jewels. The only thing is, there's a door into the bottom, but it's very vulnerable to fire on the inside of the point building downwards into it, and also from other flankers or whoever is on top of these buildings on either side, because it's almost like a skate ramp or something into the middle, and it's just very vulnerable in the bottom of it. I don't know why you go down to the bottom there to try and get inside, because you're just vulnerable for everything. There are two entrances on the top as well, so it could be an area to be fight for and try and get inside the building and flank a little bit, but again, the point building is quite tight, and it's going to be hard to enter it without a big fight, or going in as a team, really. All in all, I do quite like the map. It is quite a big map. There is a lot of verticality to it, which is pretty cool, and I like the theme, or like the sort of like hints of what we're going to get soon as well. And generally, yeah, it looks good, and it'll be interesting to see if this one gets textured and put out. The next one is Undercity, and this is probably the first one to have sort of like a darker theme. It's almost like got a green glow on it at the moment. That's sort of the hints of what they're going for at the moment, with sort of like greeny grey pipes and things like that. Maybe it's almost like a sort of steampunky underground sewer. That's a bit evil, I guess. There's actually two distinctive levels on the central zone of the map, and you can all the stairs can be accessed by any champion, because you can go upstairs, so it's not just the flankers with maneuverability that can get up there, like Atrium in some of these parts of the map. So a lot of the verticality is available to everybody, which I think gives a good level playing field for all champions to excel in the map. But also this verticality just makes the game a bit more fun. There's more variables of where people are going to come from and your tactics of where you can go. I actually quite like how the map is at the moment. The central point is slightly more open than in Atrium, although there are like buildings above it so you can fire down. There's not actually much there at the moment. I don't know whether they've just had less time to develop this one. It's even hard to try and find where the actual capture point is on this map. What's quite interesting on this map though is where the spawn room is and where like the final point capture is when you do the payload. Basically, there's like a large room with like big, I don't know whether they're going to be pipes on the side of the walls or like statues or something, and they're sort of like, it's quite closed off on the final push in, but also inside, unlike the one on Atrium, there are levels inside on top of pipes to go on top of if you're like a flanker or you're a Drogos or something, and there's also rooms on the side to flank around if you're like a vertical flanker or damage dealer. And I think this point actually is quite a bit more open as well than Atrium, and I think this could be quite interesting for fights and have different ways of approaching it, but also be a slight choke because you have to go through a doorway on the main way in, but we'll have interesting fights to go around and go above. And it actually reminds me a bit of the map on Overwatch. I can't remember what it's called, but you come around and there's like, it's like a foundry or something, and there's like magma underneath, and there's like platforms and things, and you can flank around that as well. I know we don't like the comparisons between Overwatch and Paladins, but it is quite similar in its sort of design philosophy, I guess, that you're going around trying to flank a bit, but also there's quite a choke to get through if you're the tankers or whatever. Yeah, generally it could be rather fun, and its theme is definitely different to everything else that we've seen in the game so far. Well, if it does actually go forward as sort of like a darker map. Finally, there's District, and maybe my favourite map of all of them, even though it's probably the most simple, but there's basically at the moment there's like skyscraper grey shapes at the borders of the map, maybe they're only mountains, but also has this sort of like rounded building, Roman-esque sort of fantasy things that are placeholder at the moment. Whether they'll carry over into this map as well, I'm not sure, but it could be like a district of the city that we see in Atrium. Maybe they'll be in like the same zone or region or world or part of the world that they exist in at the moment. What I like about this one is the main capture point, the siege capture point on this map. Basically, it is sandwiched between two buildings, but it does have 3 levels of cover above it, just overhanging the capture point, And also there's 2 windows on either side, both on top and on bottom. The ones on top are bigger so you can fire down, but you can also fire up into those windows. There's also behind it, and right at the back, there's like a load of little cover that like flankers that just have to walk around. They can't use vertical flight, can get into and use the cover. I think this is probably going to be one of the most hectic points in the game, capturing it basically. And normal tactics like having 2 tanks on it probably won't work as well, and I think this could really shake things up in how you approach capturing a capture point, just because it's so hectic and chaotic and there's so many ways to come from and so many places to try and counter, and I think it could be a very fun point hold basically. And also it's very accessible to all types of champions, so there won't be one pick that is necessarily massively better than another. There is a fun section where you can be knocked off the map as well into the sea just at the back of it. And throughout the map, on the actual payload push, there is loads of vertical cover and cover that you can climb onto with stairs as champions that can't fly up. But also there's smaller buildings, a bit like Atrium's but on a smaller scale, that you can still get on top of, get an advantage, but you're also vulnerable to champions that can see you up there and can focus you as you'll have to move off of them. But generally I think this one works out a little bit better than Atrium in the fact that they aren't so big and you can't sort of slide around them so much or go right into the center and not be hittable. But either way, I just think it works quite well, and there's a lot of levels as well where there's walls and things, so Eevee might be good for jumping over those walls and coming back again, getting a shot in, getting back. But in general, what I like about all of the maps that we've seen so far is there's quite a lot of emphasis on verticality and different levels of play. Whereas like Jagger Falls, you only have like the 1 level, you can get on top but it's sort of buggy, and a lot of the other levels are sort of more horizontal, like where you're fighting. Actually, I think all these maps have the same philosophy, and Stone Keep as well. They have a bit more verticality to them and levels that you can go off, and different, like it's basically giving you more options to attack with and gives more champions different ways to approach it. So more tactics just makes it more interesting, it makes the meta more interesting. And generally I like what's going on with these maps. Obviously they're all not finished, like they're not the finished product yet. And OB41 isn't actually out yet, it's just on the public test server, so we're not going to see that until next week. Alyssa said early next week. But all in all, it looks rather good, and I'm actually happy that we're going to get this to play with. And like I said before, if you've got a bad graphics card or integrated graphics card or something like that, and you've always wanted to play Paladins but maybe couldn't yet, maybe these test maps will be where you can actually play the game, maybe even with a computer that could hardly run it on low graphics on the normal maps. Maybe now you can run it on low settings on these test maps, just because they don't have the textures on the map yet, they just have these blank textures. So I'm guessing that it's going to be a lot less of a power hog on the system. Not that Paladins is a big power hog, but it's worth just checking out. Anyway, what does everyone else think about these maps? I'll probably leave some gameplay towards the end of this video just because I've got all this footage and you may as well see it. Yeah, this is just a preview of all of the maps and my thoughts on them pretty much so far. But yeah, leave your comments and what you think about them so far and what you would like to change about them perhaps from what you've seen. And if you enjoyed the video, give it a like. If you disliked it, give it a dislike and subscribe for more of my content. Anyway, I'll see you all next time. Joshino.
Overtime.
Try and run.
Overtime. That's all for the payload belong to me. Unfortunate. Ultimately. I will not be stopped. I cannot. Await you all. 15 seconds remaining. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2,
Try it!
awaits you all!
Marcia!
Enemies double.
Sweet embrace.
Behold the dragon's fury!
Be careful!
Enemy killing. Unstoppable. Nice job. Excellent. The payload.
I'm sticking.
Do this. I cannot. Challenge my behold the dragon's fury!
Try and run. Is that all you? I'll remember this.
I'll contact the objective.
Godlike.
Try and run.
My gold! 30 seconds remaining.
Like this.
15 seconds remaining. Impossible. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5,
On my way.
awaits you all. 1. Point spawning in 15 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Thanks.
Overtime. I cannot. Victory. Good game.